Welcome to the Sankofa Ancestor Shrine, where every week we invite spiritual Black folk to reconnect with our ancestors as we journey through the crossroads. Please consider donating through patreon.com/Sankofa Shrine. Ancestors, please continue to comfort us, hold us tight, protect us, and keep us wary, keep us healthy, help us find ways to avoid any dangers or mishaps in our lives. Please help us to find those patches of light that can give us hope and a sense of security. Find those ways that we can add to our wealth, add to our safety, add to whatever it is that we are looking to really build in this time, or whatever it is that we need to build always, and that will help us get through this, but we may not even realize it yet. Please bless our friends, bless our family, bless all the people in our community, especially those struggling in any areas of wealth or financial difficulty, their home, their job, their family, their health, anything of that nature. Ashe.
I open my heart to enter, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go to see what my life is going to be. I open my heart to enter, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go. I will go, I shall go. I will go, I shall go to see what my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be. I open my heart to enter, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go. I will go, I shall go. I will go, I shall go to see what my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be. I open my heart to enter, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go. I will go, I shall go. I will go, I shall go to see what my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be. I open my heart to enter, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go. my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be. To see what my life. To see what my life's gonna be. Yes. To see what. Show me and to show me and to show me. To see what. Yes. To see what my life. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? To see what my life. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? To see what my life. What my life is gonna be. To see what my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be. To see what my life is going to be.
Hello, beloved. Thank you for joining me in the shrine. Today we are going to finish our section of reading in here, the Neo-Hoodoo Manifesto. We got about halfway through, a little bit less than halfway through last time, and there was so much to talk about. There's a lot packed into this second half too, so I'm going to just jump right into it because I have a feeling this is going to be a decently long reading. So let's see here. We ended with naming people who, ancestors, elders who had displayed the Conjure energy and applied it within their lives. We're still on page 22 at the very, very bottom if you have this book. Neo-Hoodoo ain't negritude. Neo-Hoodoo never been to France. Neo-Hoodoo is yo mama, as Larry Neal said. Neo-Hoodoo's Little Richard and Chuck Berry nearly succeeded in converting the Beatles. When the Beatles said they were more popular than Christ, they seemed astonished at the resulting outcry. This is because although they could feebly, through amplification and technological sham, mimic, as if Little Richard and Chuck Berry were Loa spirits practicing ventriloquism on their horses, the Beatles failed to realize that they were conjuring the music and ritual, although imitation, of a forgotten faith, a traditional enemy of Christianity, which Christianity, the cop religion, has had to drive underground each time they meet. Neo-Hoodoo now demands a rematch. The referees were bribed and the adversary had resin on his gloves. Oof. There's a lot in this. There's a lot in this, is there not? So, damn. So we've got, that woke me up. So first off, he's referring here at the beginning to the integration of Black culture, Black spirituality as American culture. Even when they don't understand what they're doing, their rhythm has changed, right? The way they sway when they start feeling the beat has changed. The way they react when they hear a beat has changed in the last 100 years, right? Even when the gathering has nothing to do with us, their rhythm has changed because of us, because of how our culture has been adopted and so effortlessly placed into theirs because it's considered theirs now. That's how they honestly feel. So, you know, he's talking here about the influence also of some of their greatest, the ones who were transitioning music before hip hop, right? We had the whole rock and roll thing going on. And of course, a lot of that was black led. Most of it was black led. And then it was also being utilized by talented white musicians. And some of them were liking the sound, but they didn't quite understand that just because you like the sound and you start using these beats or these specific rhythms, the specific melodies or what have you, you enchant or what have you. Because John Lennon definitely, he liked to steal lyrics. He apparently stole the lyrics of Imagine from his wife Yoko Ono's journal. Go figure. Anyways, because they like to take in this way, they just don't realize, that what they're invoking. That's why they say even for us, we have to be careful, because sometimes we can be invoking something we didn't even mean to invoke, getting into something we didn't even mean to get into. And so here we have that. We have them invoking it, but then they kind of cross the line because, there's a lot that Christian God doesn't tolerate. There's a lot, that's why I think he makes Christians very bold in a lot of ways, is because it makes it so it never even really gets that close to it. It's rare for someone to get that close to it and feel they can make those types of announcements because they've spread so far, so wide. We have the cop religion. I love how he describes them as the 5-0, out here policing everybody else. Absolutely. The other day, I ran into a thread on YouTube somewhere. I forget what I was watching. And someone had I think it was something that was trending, in fact. It was very strange. I wasn't usually something that I look at what's trending, but it's rare I click on something trending. But I think that's absolutely where I was a few days ago. Somebody commented about noting that their younger friends were liberal. The older the people get, they switch to more conservative. And somebody conservative came into the comment section. They were trying to talk. And y'all, they launched into a Christian diatribe. At first I thought they were going to give a legitimate older view of being conservative. But they started off on this, first gay people were allowed to be married. And then y'all, by the time I got to the word feminazi, I was like, and they were in the good Lord. And I was like, see, this, the issue is that you really honestly think that your religion should allow you to police everybody else. Everybody else has to be held to your standard of what you say is good. And, if not, the rest of us are doomed. The rest of us are evil. The rest of us are doing too much. He was trying to imply that lots of Christian bakers were in jail for not baking cakes. It was the most bizarre. I was just yeah, they definitely the cop religion out here policing everybody else. It's something you see without even trying to see it. It's just always there. And then the rematch. I love that too, right? We're having our rise of ATRs. We're having our rise of people standing true, standing firm to the goodness of our ancestors, of our deities. And I also loved the Little Richard and Chuck Berry, being seen as the Loa, and they were the horses, being kind of used in that sense by a higher power beyond them. It was very interesting. So here he has an excerpt from the New York Times, August 7th, 1970. The Vatican forbids jazz masses in Italy. Rome, August 6th. The Vatican today barred jazz and popular music from masses in Italian churches and forbade young Roman Catholics to change prayers or readings used on Sundays and holy days. It said such changes in worship were eccentric and arbitrary. A Vatican document distributed to all Italian bishops did not refer to similar experimental masses elsewhere in the world. Although Pope Paul VI and other high-ranking churchmen are known to dislike the growing tendency to deviate from the accepted form of the Mass. Some Italian churches have permitted jazz masses played by combos while youthful worshipers sing such songs as We Shall Overcome. Church leaders 2 years ago rebuked priests who permitted such experiments. So yes, they absolutely understand it's in the music. A lot of their higher ups. And so that is why a lot of this was forbidden. That's why there are so many separations in, not the only reason there's so many separations in Christian music, but I mean, you know, their different churches have their different things, and it's, you know, based on ancestry a lot of the time, but absolutely gets infused, of course, here in America because our stuff is seen as theirs. But it's very interesting to see that absolute pushback on what was seen as, you know, Black music. And music that was spiritual in a context that wasn't necessarily Christian. Because a lot of jazz musicians, I mean, if you look into it, we have a lot of great hoodoo elders and ancestors that were jazz musicians specifically, which I think we should definitely, I'll try and make some videos about now that I think about it, because we have a lot of really good ones. And that's where a lot of information was recorded. Sometimes we have, you know, the slave narratives, but jazz music in general really shows that progression so well. Africa is the home of the Loa spirits of Neo-Hoodoo, although we are building our own American pantheon. Thousands of spirits, Ka, who would laugh at Jehovah's fury concerning false idols, translated as everybody else's religion, were fetishes. Moses, Jehovah's messenger, and Zombie swiped the secrets of voodoo from old Jethro, but nevertheless ended up with a curse. Warning, many white, Black delineators who practice hoodoo voodoo for gain and did not feed the Black spirits of hoodoo ended up tragically. So he's talking about white people who tried to come in and just kind of use this religion for their own gain, often ended up tragically. But I thought it was interesting his use of calling Moses a zombie, or using that language back on Christians. Zombies, the whole genre of horror for zombies is based on Haitian spiritual war techniques, which we could totally get into another time as well. But I did think it was really interesting him using that word turned back on what goes on in the Christian Bible, because, I mean, it's pretty, you could say the same thing in a couple situations there. Let's see. Bix Beiderbecke and Irene Castle, who exploited Black dance in the 1920s and relished in dressing up as a nun, are examples of this tragic tendency. That would be really interesting to look up. All right. Moses had a near heart attack when he saw his sons dancing nude before the Black bull god Apis. They were dancing to a heathen sound that Moses had never heard before in Egypt. Probably a mixture of Sun Ra and Jimmy Reed, played in the nightclub district of ancient Egypt's the domain of Osiris, named after the god who enjoyed the fancy footwork of the Pygmies. The continuing war between Moses and his sons was recently acted out in Chicago in the guise of an American trial. I've called Jehovah, most likely Set, the Egyptian sat on, a pun on this fiend's penalty, Satan. Somewhere, a party pooper and a hater of dance. Neo-Hoodoo are detectives of the metaphysical about to make a pinch. We have issued warrants for a god arrest. If Jehovah reveals his real name, he will be released on his own recognizance, dehorned, and put out to pasture. So I've talked about bloodthirsty gods before, definitely, and how the Christian God doesn't quite seem to be the Prince of Peace. You know, nor does his son appear to be leading this peaceful religion, you know, that so many tout it as. But this was pretty an interesting take of equating him to a more low-level Egyptian god, Saton. Satan is what he translates it to in his wordplay, and then it says that if he were to reveal his real name, he would have horns, be dehorned and thrown out to pasture where he belonged. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting take. And then, of course, give me a moment. I thought also that his take on him just being a party pooper and a hater of dance was pretty good and astute. You know, just like just hating on things that it's like, why are you even hating on this? Like, are you okay? Are you good? You know, why would you be hating on this? The type of stuff we call other people haters for, it seems traditionally, uh, you know, Christians in a lot of their more pure forms or the forms used to subdue people racially, especially, it has a lot of that to it. And then a lot of the things that are indigenous and traditional tribal religions are hated on for are just not really things that matter in the long run. It's just mind boggling a lot of the time. He goes on to say, a dangerous paranoid pain in the neck, a cop god from the get-go, Jehovah was the successful law and order candidate in the mythological relay of the 4th century AD. Jehovah is the god of punishment. The H-bomb is a typical Jehovah miracle. Jehovah is why we are in Vietnam. He told Moses to go out and subdue the world. That's such an interesting take too, because, you know, they still kind of have that manifest destiny attitude here in America. We had it definitely with the oil situation in the Middle East, and go figure during this pandemic coronavirus thing, the cost of oil has gone to like negative $40 a barrel. It's worth more to have an empty barrel than a barrel of oil at the moment. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting seeing, you know, this need to subdue the world and use it for things that just ultimately don't matter, while also subduing people and condemning them for things that don't matter. It's an interesting cycle that these things get caught in, and it does contribute to the destruction of the earth as well as humankind. But the earth has been doing pretty well since we all started staying in our houses, go figure. It says, let me see. There has never been in history another such culture as the Western civilization, a culture which has practiced the belief that the physical and social environment of man is subject to rational manipulation and that history is subject to the will and action of man, whereas central to the traditional cultures of the rivals of Western civilization, those of Africa and Asia, is the belief that it is environment that dominates man. This is from The Politics of Hysteria, Edmund Stillman and William Taft. I think we're all kind of learning that lesson. I think Western culture is going to slowly but surely come to that realization that environment and nature is really at the center, and that there's just only so much. You just really can't be in control of that because there can only be so much. Political leaders are merely altar boys from Jehovah. While the targets of some revolutionaries are laundromats and candy stores, Neo-Hoodoo targets are TV, the museum, the symphony halls and churches, art, music, and literature departments in Christianizing, education, I think they call it, universities which propagate the art of Jehovah, much Byzantine, Middle Ages, Renaissance painting of Jehovah's 500 years of civilization, as Nixon put it, are Jehovah propaganda. Many white revolutionaries can only get together with third world people on the most mundane political level because they are of Jehovah's party and don't know it. How much black music do so-called revolutionary underground radio stations play? On the other hand, how much Bach? So funny. It's so true, though, whose music they be using, but, you know, they are also, they do use it for a different purpose, to uplift. It's a weird sort of colonization. Neo-Hoodoos are black-red. Black Hawk, an American Indian, was an early philosopher of Hoodoo church, and occasionally white. Mademoiselle Charlotte is a Haitian Loa spirit. That part I do think is an interesting thing. So, you know, in that regard, I don't, you know, while I don't agree with white people seeking out ATRs, I do also understand that, you know, it's not up to me to tell Haitian people that they're doing something wrong, or, you know what I mean, or some other African traditional religion, tell the elders, just me coming in with my, you know, beliefs that I know everything, or I'm correct. But at the same time, you know, so I do have that respect for it, but then at the same time, I know what I'm telling people to do. and saying, you know, who it's for and what this stuff is for, because it is very much bloodline. So, you know, there is a lot of theory around the White Loa, you know, that when her religion was subdued, when her indigenous, because, you know, there are indigenous and sort of, in a sense, you know, indigenous European people and European religions that were subdued first, like such as in Ireland. And so, you know, there was a lot of that going on. So it does make sense when things connect, if a goddess from one religion went to another and started working there because her original space was no more. You know, there's a lot that goes into that, especially. So it's not just, you know, random people waking up one day and feeling drawn to voodoo, you know. Neo-Hoodoo is a litany seeking its text. Neo-Hoodoo is a dance and music, closing in on its words. Neo-Hoodoo is a church, finding its lyrics. Cecile Brown, Al Young, Calvin Herndon, David Henderson, Steve Cannon, Quincy Troop, Ted Jones, Victor Cruz, N.H. Pritchard, Ishmael Reed, Lennox Raphael, Sarah Fabio, Ron Welburn are Neo-Hoodoo's Manhattan project of writing. A Neo-Hoodoo celebration will involve the dance, music, and poetry of Neo-Hoodoo and whatever ideas that participating artists might add. A Neo-Hoodoo seal is the face of an old American train. Neo-Hoodoo signs are everywhere. Neo-Hoodoo is the now locomotive swinging up the tracks of the American soul. Almost 100 years ago, Hoodoo was forced to say goodbye to America. Now, Hoodoo is back as Neo-Hoodoo, and you can't keep a good church down. All right, so I do like that he says that, you know, things have been forced underground, especially for people to stay safe. But there have been people who take risks. There have been people who pass on information and keep things alive. And there's also, obviously, the infusion of our culture and our practices into everyday culture, which as well as ours is and will never die and will never, you know, stop having those roots. So anyways, I found his work so interesting. Ishmael Reed is such an interesting person. I did find in my book on the art of Neo-Hoodoo, which I know I've read a little bit out of for you before, I did find one of his interviews, which I think I'll definitely delve into later on this year. We'll read into that. But we'll take a break from him right now and look into something else for this upcoming week. And yeah, see what we can find that will be uplifting and comforting for our spiritual selves as we keep going on. I hope you're holding in there and staying safe. Thank you for watching, and may your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads.